Hello everyone, welcome to Kalam's answer writing session for the day. So today I've picked up a previous year question from GS3. This was asked in 2018 or 2019 or something, but this is a previous year question. This was based on the concept of organic farming. Organic farming was the rage for the past 3 or 4 years, and there were several questions on limbs or mains in relation to organic farming directly or indirectly. So in this context, a question has been picked up directly from organic farming, and in the year this question was asked, Sikkim was also declared as the first organic state in the country. And in this context, a question has been asked. I'll read out the question for you all. It is basically a very simple question, and I'll tell you all why. It is because it is easy to convert this question into the several side headings. But the points that you evolve under these side headings are basically dependent upon your knowledge and your expertise. That being said and done, we will start out with some prerequisites when you write an agriculture based topic. First prerequisite when you write an agriculture based question is the usage of agriculture specific terms. Like you could talk about farm subsidies, fertilizer subsidies, electricity subsidies for the farms, irrigation subsidy, and so on. In addition to this, you could talk about APMCs or the agriculture produce market, and then there is ENAM, and then you have recent reforms like agri-tech infrastructure fund, and then you also have food processing sector. So all these important concepts are relevant when you handle an agriculture based question. There are some of the other current affairs keep popping up in your newspaper in relation to agriculture. You need to write these things. The usage of these concepts is going to load your answer. It will increase the value of your answer. In addition to this, there are certain documents which are related to agriculture. You could talk about New India Vision 2020, which calls for doubling farmers income. This is basically an important concept, and keywords like this can be used to improve your answer. You could talk about blue revolution, green revolution 2.0, and so on. So these policies and phenomena can be used to increase the density of your answer. In addition to this, because this is a GS3 based question, you could always talk about sustainable development goals that are relevant for agriculture. So these are the three prerequisites that I would like to list out for you all to keep in mind when you handle an agriculture based question. Now I'll read out the question for you all, after which I'll evolve the subheading for you all. The first part of the question says Sikkim is the organic state in India. This is basically a thesis statement. It is trying to establish something. And then it moves forward to ask what are the ecological and economic benefits of the organic state. So this is basically a two themed question. It is only asking you two things. The first part is talking about ecological benefits of an organic state, and the second part is to talk about economical benefits of an organic. So these are the only two side headings that have been asked. So that is going to occupy most of the body of my answer because that is what has been asked. In addition to this, I'll try and evolve another subheading which would add value to my answer. What can I do? Probably I could talk about the features of organic farming. I'll tell the examiner some of the features of organic farming, like there is vermicomposting, like there is green manuring, there is integrated pest management, biological control of pests. So all of these features of organic farming can be put in here in the format of a diagram, so that the examiner gets to understand what I'm really talking about. That is one way to go about it. In addition, in if you're not willing to talk about the features of organic farming, maybe you could talk about the way forward, as in the steps taken by the government to improve organic farming, like the subsidies that are given, like the schemes that have been launched, like the horticultural schemes that have been launched. So all these things can also be talked about a way forward. And if you are and if you think you have time, you can always include all of these things. You could start off by talking about the diagram, which explains the features of organic farming. Then you move forward and talk about the economic benefits. And then you talk about the ecological benefits. And then you talk about the way forward slash steps take. So this is going to be a comprehensive format. The first and the last subheadings are basically optional. They are going to add value to your answer. You choose either one of them. So how do you start your introduction? There are two ways to start your introduction. One is to talk about the current affairs issue. This scheme has been recently given the status of a totally organic state. That is one way to start your introduction. But then his statement of the question itself tells us that. The statement itself tells us that Sikkim is the first organic state in the country. So it's not wise to start with the same statement. Instead of it, why not describe organic farming? Some description about organic farming, so that you'll be able to distinguish itself from conventional farming, which is loaded with fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, chemical inputs, and so on. So that way you'll be able to warm up the body of your answer with a nice introduction. And how do you conclude? You could conclude by talking about lots of things, especially the SDGs or the new India vision of 2020, which talks about doubling farmers' income, in which organic farming is going to play a crucial role. So this is going to be the basic structure of my answer. Now I'll move forward and evaluate the sample answer that has been written by this person. So this is how he starts his answer. He says organic farming is that which avoids the usage of chemical inputs, and then he moves forward and tells us that Sikkim is basically has basically won an award. What award? It is the Oscar of Best Agri Policies, and this was given out by FAO. So the second part of the introduction is basically a fact. Some people might not be aware of this fact, which is fine, but he should have started. But he started with a fact plus current affairs based. This is a good introduction. He has distinguished himself from the other answers which we usually get. Now he moves forward and talks about certain features of organic farming. And I want you all to notice how, in such a short space, he has been able to put in a lot of points. And I want you all to notice how the trick behind it. So when you have a lot of content and you want to put it down, you could just make a diagram like this and write the bullet points on. Otherwise, what happens is, if you were to write these 7 or 8 points under a single subheading, and if the subheading, first you'll start elaborating. Even if you take 1.5 line per each of these points, it is going to cost you a lot, because the question is not about features of our. Let me establish that directly, and I've already established it. These are the places where where you add value to your answer. So you have to spend only so much of time, as in a little amount of time and space, but when you do it, it adds value to your answers. What are the points he has written? He says organic farming uses fertilizer. What are the natural fertilizers? You have crop manure, green manure, crop meal. Okay, that is not crop meal, that has to be bone meal. And in addition to this, you also have vermicomposting and so on. I hope he has written. Yes, he has written. And then there are certain characteristics of organic farming. You go for crop rotation. This will help you to increase the fertility of the soil. And in addition to this, you have mixed cropping. I want you to distinguish between mixed cropping and mixed farming in the comment section. That is going to be relevant for your prelim. So here he has listed out a lot of features of organic farming, like livestock management, minimum chemical intervention. This minimum chemical intervention seems to be another repetition, because that is how he introduced his which is fine. And then he goes for biological pest control, integrated pest management. So he has given me a good number of points in this short space. Now he's directly supposed to jump into the first side heading, which is the ecological benefits of an organic state. First, he says that it will protect the soil fertility. So when you start using green manure, bone meal, etc., it is going to increase the fertility of your soil. And when you rotate your crops and intersperse it with legumes and so on, that will lead to nitrogen fixation, and that is also going to increase the fertility of the soil. Once soil fertility increases, it is going to decrease the scourge of the problem of what? Desertification and land degradation. Okay, so that is what has been written. In addition to this, when you have an organic state basically tries to run on the principle of compost and green manure and so on. So if you need these kinds of manure, you are supposed to integrate your waste collection and treat your waste and then use it as your manure. Okay, be it in urban areas or local areas and so on, or semi-urban areas and so on. In all these areas where there is some amount of cropping that is taking place, the waste has to be segregated, the organic part of it has to be treated, and then it has to be used for treated and composted, and it can be used as a compost. So that is another ecological benefit. There is waste segregation, there will be less pollution and so on. Next, he moves forward and he says there is increasing biodiversity. So when you're using natural in there are several little insects which are dependent on each of these natural inputs, and this biodiversity of these little inputs are going to increase, in especially the pollinators. When we start using a lot of chemical fertilizer, what happens is the pollinators like bees, etc., bees, grasshoppers, and they are at risk. And in fact, if you look at the FAO reports in recent times, Food and Agriculture Organization reports in recent times, I remember a news article which talked about how 2 out of 5 pollinators are at risk, partly because of climate change and because of this industrial pollution and synthetic fertilizers. So the situation is pretty dire. What happens when you lose your pollinators? Because eventually, if there is no pollination, it will be really difficult to produce grains, right? So in this context, using organic principles, you can increase the biodiversity. In addition to this, when you have an organic state, there are as less chemical inputs as possible. So there is going to be some kind of restriction to veterinary medicine. So if there is a restriction on veterinary medicines, what kind of medicines do we have? We have diclofenac, etc. If you ban these medicines like diclofenac, you can increase the flourishing of the vultures, because vultures which eat diclofenac eventually die because of kidney failure and so on. Everybody knows about this logic that has been given by NC. I'll anyway revive it for you all. So firstly, there are cattle. If these cattle become diseased, a diclofenac drug is administered, which is an anti-inflammatory and antibiotic, something like that. This drug gets ingested into the body of the animal. If this animal dies, if this cow dies, and if it gets eaten by a vulture, there is movement of this diclofenac from the carcass to the body of the vulture, and then immediately the vulture gets loses its kidney, as in the kidney fails and the vulture dies. So this problem is going to be solved, and vultures are really important, and I want you all to notice how important scavengers are. Go back to your NCRTs and see the important prelims relevant point. In addition to this, if you have organic fertilizers, what happens is there won't nearby water bodies are going to be. We face a lot of problems these days because the agricultural runoff, having rich nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, they go into the nearby water bodies, and this leads to algal blooms, and eventually it leads to what? Eutrophication, which is the drying up of a lake. So that is basically another problem, and this problem will be solved. In addition to this, the pollution will be decreasing, we talked about it, and then the INDC targets will be met. Like for example, the fertilizer industry and all other inputs of an organic decreases, it is going to be a less power intensive state. So this will also meet the INDC targets indirectly. So these are 7 good points that he has written. I think he has written a bit too many points. 4 or 5 points would have been sufficient. That would have given him some space to talk about some next side heading, like a way forward, in which he could talk about some steps that the government has taken to improve the organicity of different states in the country. And I want you to notice how he has not written the way forward. He should have written the way forward and at least 2 or 3 points under it. I want you all to add way forward to your answers. That is going to be the important take home for your day. Now we will talk about environmental benefits of an organic state. One, organic farming, everything comes naturally and they are produced naturally by your farm. Like for example, if there is livestock in your farm, that is going to produce manure. The food you use is also going to produce some kind of compost. You are using only these two in your farms, that is going to decrease cost. You don't have to purchase fertilizers separately. So there will be a cost reduction of about 25%, which is basically an estimate, and this improves farmer income. In addition to this, if you look at the northeastern regions, there are several products which are indigenous to northeastern regions. So now if the tag of organic state gets attached to a northeastern state, there will be an increasing market value of those niche products. That is also going to be an environmental benefit. Okay, I think the name of the side heading is wrong. He started out by talking about ecological benefits. Now he's saying environmental benefits. So what he means is economic benefits, and I want you to make notice that and make the necessary changes in your answer. Next, if your products are organic, if they have that brand value of an organic tag, they are going to be easily purchased by the conscious people across the world. So the export competitiveness is also going to increase. There is another added advantage. Everybody knows about what sanitary and phytosanitary measures. If I want to export an agri product outside, it has to meet certain standards of sanitation and phytosanitation. They are coming under WTO agreement and so on. So these standards will be easily met if I use the organic way of farming. In addition to this, I can improve the nutritional outcomes. An organic product is much more rich in nutrients, is less in terms of pesticides. There will be less problem bioaccumulation and biomagnetism. So it will increase the nutritional outcomes eventually. And in addition to this, the fertilizer demand is going to decrease. The urea demand is going to decrease. And because the urea demand is going to decrease, the subsidy which the government is supposed to shell out from its coffers to urea is going to decrease. So the subsidy burden on the government is going to decrease. So these are the points he has written. In addition to this, he says the following in his conclusion. Organic farming is a tool to achieve SDG Goal 2, Sustainable Development Goal 2, and then the New India Vision 2022 of doubling farmers' income. Thus, it must be encouraged. Okay, so this is a decent conclusion. What is my review for the answer? I think he has written really well. He has written a good number of points under each of his subheadings. He added value to his answer by talking about what he by talking about the features of organic farming. But I would have been happy if he decreased some space in features of organic farming, or maybe decreased some points in ecological benefits of an organic state, and added at least 1 or 2 points under the way forward, so that the examiner knows, that the student knows about the steps that have been taken by the government. That should be my review for the day. I'll meet you again tomorrow with a new answer. Thank you for your participation.